Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I am well, thank you.
All right. So today's show is with Ryan Lampers, buddy Ryan Lampers. We talk about backcountry food. He's a wizard at this stuff. He has the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. He does with his wife, Dr. Hillary Lampers, and Ryan has grown his own food for years, master gardener. They preserve their food like pros, and he makes his own backcountry meals and has for years. And in this podcast, you'll learn from Ryan what some of the meals he likes to make, how he likes to make them. You're kind of going to get, okay, this is my breakfast. Here's my sort of snack food. Here's my entrees at night, and how he does it.
And he gives actual recipes for these meals in the podcast, step-by-step instructions to how he goes about making them.
Yeah, and it's really good. And you're going to learn kind of Ryan's diet in a sense, what Ryan likes to eat. And I think that is valuable life information, not just backcountry hunting information. We get a lot of emails from people talking about inflammation, diets, that they're sore. We got an email just the other day, and I'll read this to you. This was from Christopher Brown. He said, "Hi, Brian. I have been catching up on the podcast and videos lately. You talk about your diet in a few of them, and I was wondering if you had a current blog post or podcast I could get some info from as to what you are doing exactly. I have the issues with inflammation that you talked about in your elk camp chat video, as well as mild Crohn's. Need to change some things up, and your diet sounds like it might help. I looked on Google, but couldn't find anything recent. Would really appreciate the information. Love the podcast. Thanks." A lot of people suffer from inflammation. Ryan's 45 years old and is a machine. Go, 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 go every day. He talks about on the podcast. Doesn't have really the joint pain, the muscle pain that a lot of older guys do. I'm 44. I don't really have any problems with joint pain either. I probably can I clean up my diet a lot more. I mean, I do like Haagen-Dazs ice cream. As you listen to this podcast, you'll hear Ryan talk about sugar. And he really doesn't want sugar in his diet, because Ryan has figured out that causes problems for him. A life without sugar might sound daunting to some people, but I would argue that Ryan and myself, because I have very low intake of sugar, that we eat delicious food all day, every day. Like, I don't feel like I'm
deprived.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm deprived at all. A giant slice of pizza that's all nasty with thick dough, it doesn't appeal to me. Used to, doesn't now. I spent 2 years as a missionary in Japan, and when I lived there, when I first got there, I went from the standard American diet, standard American diet, the SAD diet.
I didn't realize that was an acronym
SAD.
For a little too long.
Yeah, and I went from that to lean, healthy fats, healthy proteins, meat, like sushi type stuff, white rice, pretty bland grain, not a lot of gluten issues, digests easily. I went from the American like pizza and Whopper hamburger and French fries and McDonald's to Japan. And the first 3, 4, 5 months, the food was really bland. And I was like, man, blah, because I'm used to this rich, sugary food, soda pop, root beer, whatever. And my palate changed, so that by the time I came home, I remember I got home, I think it was Mom. She gave me a Snickers bar out of her bag, and I took a bite of it, and I was like, I chewed a couple of bites, and I spit it out. I couldn't handle the sugar. I was just blown away. So I learned from that experience, it takes time, but when you break yourself away from things like sugar, carbohydrates, grains, things like that, and you get away from those things, you can really change your palate so that you really appreciate things like avocado, coconut oil, salmon, fish, rice, things that in many ways are just as tasty because you're emphasizing the fat. Fat is flavorful. It's delicious. It satiates. Fat has a tendency to make you feel full and satisfied, where sugar tends to spike insulin levels and make you want to eat more sugar and crave more food. And so you tend to overeat as well. So being able to reduce sugar and carbohydrate intake to a proper level. And you do need carbs though. And everybody's a little different. Some people thrive on a higher intake of carbs, and some thrive on a lower intake of carbs, but not every carb is created equal. So with that, I would suggest the book Wired to Eat by Rob Wolf. I think it's a good book because over the years, he was the writer of the Paleo Solution book. I think the book by Mark Sisson called Primal Blueprint is a great one. But Wired to Eat is great because, as Rob puts it, he said in the book, the takeaway from Wired to Eat is that is basically it's finding what works for you and your body, right? With an emphasis on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are an important lever to pull when it comes to your health. Some people find that 25 grams of carbohydrate a day is a lot for them, and that's what they need. Some people find 100 or 150 or even 200, depending on your activity level and your athleticism or your body type, your genetic profile, your gut biome. Like all of this plays a role. What this book kind of teaches you is like figure out, and this is what Ryan said in the podcast that you're about to hear, figure out what works for you. Ryan has figured out. I started asking Ryan, well, how many carbs do you eat? What are your macronutrient types? Like
he's a little lost for
words.
And
he's like, I don't know.
I don't care. He counts calories, like max calories, but he doesn't go anywhere near macro.
And even max calorie, he doesn't even like pay too much attention to. He just kind of knows about what he needs to perform optimally of these types of foods that he knows he digests well and feels good when he eats. And he's learned that chocolate in his, morning breakfast meal doesn't help with inflammation and soreness, right? It's going to be different for everyone. But he talks about this, Rob Wolf talks about this here. He says, when he's talking to people, trying to figure out what works for them, what to eat, he says, I follow the standard elimination protocol. And this is your standard elimination diet, meaning you remove, reintroduce, and observe. So you remove a lot of things from your diet, eggs, nightshades, straight up sugars, sodas, carbohydrates.
Can you classify nightshades real fast? Just because, I know tomatoes are a nightshade, but
I think various peppers and tomatoes and other things are nightshades. And I don't really know. It's been a while since I've read this, but as I understand it, they were toxic at some point for humans to eat. But over time, they've been domesticated or evolved somewhat so that certain portions of the human population can eat them without any negative side effects. Okay. Others, no, they have problems. For me, I have a real problem with lemons and limes and even oranges. I don't do well.
Sores. If I eat a whole lemon, cold sore.
Yeah, something citrus. Citrus is, I can't do citrus. But our mother eats enough citrus to drown a person every day.
4 or 5 oranges when they're in
and
season.
Needs them and feels good and thrives on them. That's what I'm talking about. Everyone's different. You can't just. The best way to figure out what works for you is to do this elimination protocol. Remove the things from your diet that you don't like. Reintroduce them gradually. Certain things, and you might find out, well, I've eliminated dairy from my diet. Did this for a month. Feel this way. Put dairy back in. Man, I'm sluggish. I can't poop. I feel crummy.
You've done elimination diets before in the past.
Right.
How did you go about that? What did you keep in the diet?
For me, the things that I got rid of course, was everything processed, mostly all sugars. I found that I thrive on white rice. I digest it super well.
Okay.
And I find no problems with it. Other people do. I don't. I thrive on sweet potatoes. I can eat sweet potatoes. So when you went and did
your elimination diet, did you just kick everything else out except for rice?
I got yes, I kept in white rice because I know from years of eating it that I'm good there. I stuck with yams and sweet potatoes for carbohydrate intake, and then all vegetables are fine for me. Mostly green vegetables like green onions. I love throwing those in with and then I'll use kale. I respond well to kale. I've eaten that for a long time. Some people, when they first go to these cruciferous vegetables like kale and broccoli and so on, it's hard for them to digest. So cooking it, steaming it, sauteing it in a
Helps
pan.
break it down a bit.
Helps break it down, makes it a little more digestible. And you might have to start with smaller if you haven't had vegetables in years, which there's a lot of people out there like that.
I met a dude when I was in the MTC who had never eaten a vegetable and boasted about it. And Brian, it showed.
Yeah.
You could tell.
So taking these vegetables and breaking them down and eating smaller portions until your gut biome gets used to it, might be something you need to do. But yeah, I stuck with foods I knew I did well on, like elk and deer meat, fish, salmon, trout, things I caught on my own, white rice, sweet potatoes, yams, that kind of thing. And then vegetables, apples, berries. I thrive on berries. I don't have any negative things. And then I did things like remove citrus from my diet, a large amount of citrus from my diet. Man, I noticed I felt great right away. Remove dairy. I removed dairy for a couple of months and did great. I missed cheese and other things. Later, I reintroduced dairy with a lot like high fat dairy and
like
white
heavy
hard
cream type
cheeses.
stuff?
Yeah, heavy cream. I reintroduced some of that high fat dairy between cheese and cream, and I did well on it. No problems. Other people find out they get phlegmy. Their nose gets, their guts get bloated and things like that. So, but I slowly started to add items back into my diet that I had removed, and you start to experiment and you feel like, okay, I don't do so good with tomatoes. Again, back to the citrus thing. I think the acid in the tomatoes. I don't do well with tomatoes, tomato-based sauces. They mess with me.
Spaghetti holds no sway over me whatsoever.
Right. So you kind of figure these things out and you learn. But
so just ballpark. You got rid of everything. You're just eating rice. And how long did that period go for? And then how long did it take you when you started introducing stuff? Did you introduce one thing and then wait a couple days and introduce another?
So when I started the journey, I was 210 pounds. And I knew I was not super lean, but I was strong, and I've been doing P90X. I was going to say,
was this the P90X days?
Yeah. And the basketball, 3-4 games a week. Yeah, in the Portland Basketball City League.
Biking to and from work every day.
Yes. So I was fairly fit, but 210, and I just was like, I just got husky and bulky because I'm an older man, and it's what we do. And it's
no
funny.
Flexibility, can't touch your toes.
Yeah, I did the primal and the paleo thing, and I also started CrossFit about the same time. And within, I would say, within 3 months, 2 months, really 2.5 months, I went from 210 to 175-ish.
Wow.
180. So
about 30, 35 pounds just gone.
Gone. And I kept a lot of muscle. But I had gone primarily like 20 grams of carbohydrate, 25 grams of carbohydrate or less for those 2 months, while still riding my bike to work an hour each way. It was like...
you were still really active.
Playing basketball and doing some CrossFit stuff. And what I found was that was too low of a carbohydrate intake.
For that high activity level.
And after losing all the weight, I felt great losing the weight. But after about 6 weeks, I started to bonk on I just had no energy riding a bike, no energy.
From your body to pull from.
I probably burned all my glycogen stores, all the sugar stores in my muscle because I just wasn't getting enough carbohydrate. So I bumped up the carbohydrate intake primarily for after workouts. Immediately felt better. Immediately. And then I realized that a paleo style kind of meats and fats and vegetables, berries, all the things that I thrive on when I eat, consuming those things, adding to it carbohydrates on high activity days, like maybe a couple sweet potatoes or a bowl of rice and sweet potatoes or whatever works for me. I consume that bumps me up. It seems to be the perfect combination for me to stay lean, feel good, no inflammation at 44, approaching 45. I just feel young and strong. And I need to add in there the HRT issues, the hormone replacement therapy, because I need to revisit that subject, and I will soon. I'm having on the podcast
Your testosterone doctor?
The doctor, the hormone specialist that I've been, consulting with for the past 3 or 4 months. And I have experienced under his help, I've experienced some major performance gains. I just feel totally different. And I need to talk about that. But the diet thing and the inflammation thing, I started doing that 10 years ago or so. And I'm still doing that today. And I think it's really helped me age well and feel great. Kind of a long tangent, but I hope that you find that conversation useful. Like I said, I would check out Wired to Eat by Rob Wolf. And if you want a really easy read that really makes things basic for you, the Primal Blueprint is great.
It's fun and it's entertaining.
And it's simple. There's a couple graphs on carbohydrate intake, and that are excellent, that really help you see how carbohydrates affect weight gain. And I found it to be true for myself. But back to your question earlier, the way that I did it is I removed it for, like I said, 2.5 months, and I lost a whole bunch of weight because it's borderline keto, really. But I was just eating lean fats and stuff, but good, healthy avocados and coconut oil in the mix with some salmon and fish fats and fish oils in the mix, vegetables, apples, berries. And that was kind of my diet for a couple of months. And man, I had enough protein. Like they say 1 gram of protein per lean pound
of body muscle,
body mass. And so, I would try to eat, at the time, 150 grams of protein a day. I kind of struggle with that much protein. I usually take in more like 125 grams a day, and I'm about 185 pounds. That's kind of where I'm at with the protein intake. My fat intake varies. I don't really track it that much. I just kind of, I don't really know where I'm at with that, to be honest. But my carbohydrate intake is probably between 50 and 75 grams a day, somewhere in there. And like I said, I added some things back in, like dairy. I get away with dairy. It's fine, especially cheese. Doesn't affect me at all.
Cheese
0.
I'm good with cheese.
Cottage cheese, no effect at all. Butter, no effect on me whatsoever. When you start throwing in milk, I get a little phlegmy in the throat. It's not a big deal. I do love milk. My stomach though feels fine, but I think it's suboptimal for me. It's not ideal. So I tend to stay away from straight up milk in general. And like I said, all citrus things, some nightshades, certain peppers, stay away from all of that stuff. Stay away from tomatoes. I don't do well on those. Anything that's a green vegetable, like leafy green stuff, mustard greens, collard greens, arugula, spinach, kale, and then things like broccoli and asparagus. I thrive on all that. So I eat that every day. I eat a lot of it. But the idea is to sort of remove things from your diet. And lately, I've tried to get my diet to be a lot more fun. So I've been using Hank Shaw's cookbooks, Buck Moose, which is a cookbook on, how to cook venison and things like that. And I have been experimenting with that a lot over the last month. Been enjoying those meals a lot. I have the Meat Eater cookbook. I am just getting into those recipes, and I've mixed things up with Hank Shaw's Duck Duck Goose, I think is what his bird one is, his waterfowl book, and his other book is Pheasant, Quail, Cottontail, I think, which is small game. And anyway, they're priceless. They're easy recipes to follow, simple, they're easy to understand, and Hank does a great job of putting them together. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And it's fun. It's fun to mess with these different spices and ingredients and kind of season your meat and your vegetables and whatever is part of that meal. Experiment with new and exotic foods. And I feel like I'm not depriving myself in any way of just an awesome, enriching Diet. Yeah. So it takes a little more time. You kind of need to make eating a hobby or a priority. And a lot of people don't want to mess with that. But man, it's so rewarding to get your own food, mess around with it, cook it, eat it. It is.
I love that he named his book Wired to Eat.
Yeah.
Because it really is. And if you think about it, the amount of time that we used to spend gathering food and doing other things was 90-10.
Yeah.
And because of the way society is, we basically flipped that. And I think there's something in our mammalian brain that gets really excited about a good cooked meal for a reason.
I agree. And we sat down on Sunday night and we had the Thai, like satay, like skewers. It was like curry and coconut milk, marinade, and then peanut sauce, homemade peanut sauce, and you dip the meat in the peanut sauce. And Caitlin ate. I mean, we all just smashed it, and it was awesome. The elk roast was, it wasn't elk roast. It was you cut the meat into strips and you marinate it, and then you shish kebab basically. Throw it on the grill, fire it real quick, and then you have your little peanut sauce and you dip it, and it had a real Asian flavor to it. So rewarding. It's so rewarding to see my whole family smash basically the hindquarter of a deer. Like, geez, we can go through meat like that when it's cooked like that with a meal like that. The veggies, Hank has it's the whole meal that you're preparing for. The whole dish it's from your carbs and your fats and your protein, all of it all in one plate, start to finish. The side dish complements the main dish. It's awesome.
I think it's lunchtime, bro. I think it's time to wrap this up and go get something to eat.
So I'm going to look into, we talked about food dehydration in this podcast. Mm-hmm. I've actually, on a side note, been looking at a freeze dry machine.
A freeze drying machine?
That, and I think I'm going to bring that up on a future podcast here because I've been doing some math. Like, what's the return on investment here? At what point does it pay for itself? And so on.
Pretty fast, because you spend a lot of money on prepared food.
I'll tell you what, if you're going to go backpacking with your family, we just backpacked up the mountain the other day just for fun.
Your wife and 3 daughters.
Yep. You're talking about a family of 5. Man, imagine supplying them with Heather's Choice for 7 days or something like that.
That's a paycheck, dude. That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. And I think for certain trips, yes, that's nice. But if you're into getting in the backcountry with friends and family and especially your kids, being able to make your own, freeze dry your own meals at home, I think and it used to be $4,000 or so for something like that. Now I think they're approaching $1,500 or $2,000. And you look at, last year spending $300 or $400 on backcountry meals for a period. Man, I could really, in a few years, I could justify the cost. Mm-hmm. So it's actually not, Ryan mentioned to me, well, I get that, but you can accomplish the same thing with a dehydrator. Mm-hmm. Not the same thing, but very close to the same thing.
You lose some nutrition.
But you don't have the shelf life. But also, you cannot dehydrate an ice cream sandwich.
That's true.
And there is that.
We were YouTubing people freeze drying stuff. They were freeze drying ice cream sandwich. And if you've ever eaten one that you've got from REI up on the mountain, lightweight, calorie item, but it's just that dessert to be able to just smash an ice cream sandwich on the mountain. It's pretty impressive. It's good. That's not something you can dehydrate. And you can't dehydrate meat. You make jerky.
You can dehydrate it, but you can't make jerky with a freeze dryer.
That's true.
So you can make a dehydrator work because Heather's Choice is like virtually all dehydrated, where Mountain House is all freeze dried. Mm-hmm. But I believe a freeze dried meal can last 20-something years and retain its nutritional value, where a dehydrated meal can last a year or so.
That's crazy. 20 years.
Or a year and a half or something like that. So I do think there's some legitimate arguments for investing in a freeze dry machine. So we'll explore that. I think it could be could turn out to be a very enjoyable process, because even freeze drying your meat, I looked at these guys that freeze dried their meat and then they just set it in a bowl of water, and warm water, and 10 minutes later it came out and it was just a steak. I was like, wow, and you preserved it? You could preserve that steak for 15 years, theoretically, drop it in water and then eat it, and you're good to go. That was impressive. It's like,
I don't know if I would do it though.
You could bring that steak on the mountain, you know?
See, that I would do. Like, I could eat a steak that I know had been dehydrated or freeze dried for a couple months.
Well, Mountain House does those meals that are just a chicken breast that's been dehydrated and mashed potatoes on the side. It rehydrates. It's just like a chicken breast. I mean, it really is when you're done. And it just looks like a foam biscuit.
Yeah,
it doesn't weigh anything. And then when you rehydrate it, you've got the full on deal. But being able to freeze dry a good batch of strawberries or raspberries, you get a giant, and then be able to rehydrate those. So when you dehydrate a bunch of raspberries, you can't just add water and then they plump back up to similar to their original state. When you dehydrate, it shrinks them down into nothing. And when you add water to it, it doesn't quite go back the way it was.
Dehydration kind of cooks it in a way.
Yep.
And
yeah.
that changes the texture and everything of the cells.
Which I think is why it works well for beef jerky, for example. You want your jerky to be dried and cooked and semi, like you would hang it out in the sun back in the old days, right? And let it just wind blow and cure. You're doing the same thing with a dehydrator, but you're accelerating that, right? And now you've got them. But if you just freeze dry strips of meat, it's still raw meat. Once you rehydrate it, it's a raw piece of meat, right? It's ready to be cooked.
Yeah, it's a little different.
It's a little different situation. You know, we're going to explore it though. I think it'll be a great podcast.
I think it would be too.
Anyway, things I like today. I listened to the Ben O'Brien and Cameron Haynes podcast that Ben does on the Hunting Collective, and I enjoyed it. They talked about the Adam Greentree situation. I think that was a beneficial discussion, and I like that Ben is willing to talk about the issue, even though it's a sticky situation, and give his thoughts. Also, Cam gave some very interesting
self-defense
tips. One-on-one combat tips for mountain lions and bears. I thought that was very entertaining because Cam has a plan. He has a plan, but like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
He's never had to execute said plan.
Yeah, and he admits that in his head it sounds awesome. It's like, well, if we drive off a cliff, I'm gonna undo my seatbelt and break the window, and you know, when the vehicle lands in the ocean, and I'm gonna swim out. Like, everything sounds fine. It was like this year when I was hunting Big Sexy in the Ohio big woods, and I was in that tree, and there was freezing rain that had covered everything, and the branches and the trees were falling all around. So I had a little rappel rope from the top to the ground, and I had a little knot in it so I could just bail from the tree if it started to go down. And in theory, right, like,
you land both feet on the ground.
I would excel.
Walk away from the falling tree.
It was definitely going to be a fast
rappel.
I mean, I was going to hit the ground quick like a fire pole, but it'd be better than dying in theory.
You'd snap an ankle rather than a neck.
And since I was trying to kill Big Sexy, I climbed to the moon, so I was well up in you're going to die range in the tree, like 40 something feet. So, but in your head though, you got a plan. It does help you stick it out. And I got Big Sexy, so.
And Cam's never been attacked by a bear, so
not yet.
Good for him.
Yeah. So anyway, that was an entertaining one. I enjoyed that. And Brent. Oh, another thing I like. We gave away the Hoyt Helix for signing up for the newsletter. To find out if you were one of those lucky people, go to your inbox. And Brent and I put a little video together announcing the winner, showing us picking the winner.
Maybe you might need to go to your spam folder.
Yeah, you might have to check your spam, junk folder.
But the email was sent.
And if we don't hear back from the winner within 9 days, because we launched it yesterday, 9 days, we're going to do this again. And we're going to keep doing that until the winner steps up and gets the bow. So congrats to the winner. Hopefully he can claim that bow. So far, we have not heard back from him yet.
Nope.
Still early, but I would say, well, we've had about half the email list has opened the email and watched the film, or not watch, but have at least opened the email. So anyway, and then Brent, you have a pet peeve you want to go over before we get in the podcast, and I think you need to get it off your chest. So lay it on me.
Okay.
Let it out. A lot of confess.
People aren't going to like this. They're not. Because a lot of the people are guilty of this. The majority of people are guilty of this.
Yes.
If you own a dog that is under 5 pounds, you might be a bad person. I have a large dog. She's a big, beautiful girl. She's about 120 pounds. And we go for walks. And every time we go for walks, and here's the deal, we've trailed behind people with other dogs.
Yeah.
And they don't get barked at. But when my big, beautiful girl comes walking around the corner, she gets barked at. And that bothers me. That, and they come over to my yard, and they poop in my yard.
I thought you said that they deserve to be classified as not a pet, but rather
Small game.
a small game animal.
And I should be able to hunt them. I think that's fair. They're the same size as a rabbit. They probably have about as much meat as a rabbit. And all they do is lie around, so I bet you they'd be tender.
There you have it, folks. Don't bring your small dog around Brent.
Or cats.
He has it. What about Rio? What about Rihanna's dog?
She's a nice dog. And she's more than 5 pounds. She's probably closer to 15 or 20.
Okay, so Rio's okay.
Rio's okay. Rio's not on the table for dinner.
But our sister Adeline's dog.
Cooper? Yeah, Cooper might be edible. Yeah, we might be eating him someday. We'll see. I've met the amount of smart, small dogs are far and few between.
Okay.
I've been around a lot of dogs, and I have not been impressed with them that are under 5 pounds.
Gotcha.
Especially when they get real twitchy. If a dog is like small and it's shaking, there's just something in me that goes, you can't trust it.
Yeah.
There's something wrong.
Yeah. All right. It's good stuff.
It's good knowledge, folks. Keep that in mind.
Okay, folks. Enjoy the podcast. As always, we appreciate all the support on the show. Check this out with Ryan Lampers. Let us know what you think. Leave comments on the YouTube video. Go to briancall.com, sign up for the newsletter, and stay gritty. All right, welcome back to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am in Idaho with Ryan Lampers, Stealthy Hunter, backcountry hunter extraordinaire. How's that title?
That's a little much. That's a lot much, actually.
Well, Brian does the Hunt Harvest Health podcast with his wife, Hillary. And you're a big foodie, big health conscious human being. You're 45 years old?
45. My wife is 46, though. I'll announce that.
Yeah, nice job.
Just turned.
Just throw her under the bus like that.
Just turned. You know, she's like one of them ladies that really
She's an older
care.
woman.
Yeah, she's not hiding the fact she's 46.
She looks darn good, dude.
I posted the other day, she looks like she's 26.
Yeah.
No, nobody would guess she's 46.
So we're going to talk about food and meal prep because you're quite skilled at that. You've been doing it for a long time. And let's start with these right here in front of us. You have these protein balls. What exactly am I looking at? Talk about these things.
Oh, man. So, food.
I'm just going to eat one right now.
Go for it. Yeah, that is my love language right there is food. So, dude, these things, I just make them because they're easy.
Wow.
I'm lazy. They're cheap, and I'm a cheap wad. I hate buying stuff. So they're easy. It's like, I'll rattle off the ingredients for you. Basically, you've got so how I make it, the batch I make, I'll run 1.5 cups of peanut butter, like the good stuff, the Adams peanut butter. It's got all the good oil to it, you know. I'll do that with 2 cups of oats. either old-fashioned oats or whatever you got. And you can grind the oats if you want or just leave them whole. I just leave them whole. I'll add a little bit of honey or agave or maple syrup. It's about a half a cup would be top end. From there, man, like these ones, I ran some goji berries in just because I had them. Sometimes you can run some seeds. Some hemp hearts are good, extra protein. I'll put like half of a scoop of, I just run like the Mountain Knops, vanilla or chocolate, whatever. Sometimes I'll get crazy and I build those little cookies there, and I'll throw like 3 tablespoons of coffee, like a real fine ground coffee in it. Mix it up, roll them in shredded coconut. Have a little bowl of shredded coconut on the side, roll them up, flatten them out, make cookies, roll them up and dip them in that coconut, put them on a tray, throw them in the fridge. They're solid. They're a no-bake bar. They're uber healthy. There's a lot of fats, good protein in there. They're delicious, and they're cheap as the dickens. So it's great.
This is really good.
Yeah.
Really good. So,
and you can just backpack them down, man. You do.
I was going to say,
run a little backpack. You do 2 in a bag.
They're not dehydrated, easy. So they're a little heavier.
They're a little heavier. You can throw them in a dehydrator, similar to like a Packaroon from Heather's Choice.
And how do they turn out?
They turn out fine. Yeah.
Really? You still like them?
Oh yeah. Yep. They turn out good.
And are they light as Heather's?
No. These have a lot more peanut butter to them. I love peanut butter.
Ryan, you need to help me come up with a gritty snack.
A gritty snack.
A gritty backpacking snack.
Oh, I've got so many to talk about right now.
That we need to manufacture and supply to the masses.
Don't you think everybody would like those if they made them?
These are ridiculous. And I've met a lot of people who make these and bring them on different hikes and stuff. And they're really good. Yeah. I love them. And Suzanne, my wife, makes them all the time.
You can get creative with them. I mean, you can, sometimes I'll do like that poppy seed protein powder that they do. Chocolate protein powder or whatever, just to mix up the flavor. You can add little pieces of dried fruit to it, dried berries, craisins if you're into that, all that kind of stuff. You can just throw whatever you want in there. You may have to jack up the peanut butter a little bit if it gets a little dry, but just mix and match and make them different flavors. And like I say, I like putting hemp hearts in there because they're just loaded with protein. So you can make those things pretty powerful.
You and your wife seem to be into the marijuana.
Yeah, hemp hearts, CBD.
Just kidding.
I didn't tell you about those cookies, did I? What we got in those?
Not yet. Woo woo! I'm diving in though.
No.
But you can dehydrate these, but they're not as light as a Packaroon.
No,
but still good.
They're good. Yep, real good. Yep.
They preserve. They last longer.
You lose a little. Yeah. The coconut gets a little bit more dried out and whatnot. They don't have that kind of wet
Same
consistency
nutrition?
Yeah, for sure. You're not losing anything there. But I just like the consistency of this right here. I could eat those all day long up there on the mountain. So
yeah. Okay, let's talk about what else you like to bring on the mountain.
Sure.
Well, first, before we do that, I've personally eaten a lot of your jerky.
Okay.
And it's time for Brian Call to make massive quantities of jerky because I have so much meat in the freezer right now.
Yeah.
Tell me how this is done and you didn't use a smoker.
No, dehydrator.
And why?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. Because I'm lazy, I guess. I'll stick with that answer. Seems fitting.
I like lazy.
So I have an Excalibur dehydrator. It's a 9-tray dehydrator. It's got a timer on there. It's got, a temperature control setting on there. So, I also dehydrate a lot of vegetables. So you want the ability to set that temperature down like 125. Versus when you're dehydrating full meals with meat, you want to be up there like 165. And then in between with the fruits. So, I like that variable setting. Excalibur makes a great one. It's not going to break the bank. They're like $300 tops. Yeah, I mean, there's so much you can make in those things. And that's
These are ridiculous.
Aren't those good? Yeah, I mean, I've gotten to the point where I try to make almost everything. So all my jerky goes in the dehydrator. It's it's just a real simple mix that I do up with either teriyaki or soy and all that, and some apple juice and spices and dehydrate it. It's got a great flavor. I will run, like if you want to sweeten it up a little bit, I'll run like a little bit of maple syrup on there in the brine. And that just puts a little sheen to it.
Okay.
And it just kind of makes it extra tasty. But
Okay, I like what you just said there, except not enough detail.
not enough detail.
Okay, so
Yep.
what cut of meat are you using?
Any kind of meat. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yep.
Front shoulder, rump, like what makes the best?
So I'll do, whatever bag I pull out of the freezer, I'm running it. Obviously shanks and stuff like that can be used different, but any of the rump pieces, shoulder pieces are great for it.
Okay.
If you can separate the shoulder stuff, keep those bags marked, do as much shoulder meat as you can. Obviously, it's the toughest part of the critter. So.
Okay. And you remove sinew and all the tough stuff?
I don't as much if I got jerky bags. So these days I have jerky bags where I just pull cuts of meat, shoulders, and I'll actually just write jerky on it. That's going into the jerky pile. And I don't mess with getting the silver skin.
When you say jerky bags, this is just the stuff you didn't butcher up into cuts.
Right. So when
and
I
you
butcher
just threw
the deer,
into the freezer as jerky.
I'm cleaning up. I'm getting all the silver skin off. I'm getting all the sinew. I'm getting all the fats.
So you've already
off
kind of
venison.
pre-prepped these cuts. These are cuts you
Right.
didn't turn into steaks. You didn't turn into something else.
Exactly right.
They're ready for jerky at a later date.
Yep.
Do you let them age in the freezer before you pull them out?
Nah. No.
Okay.
No. Typically these days it ends up aging because I've got animals from the prior year. By the time hunting season rolls around, I'm still working on the previous year. So it ends up aging about a year anyway.
Because you did tell me you do like to age you like to eat.
Just aging it in the freezer.
Just leaving it in the freezer for a year before you start eating it.
Yep. You pull it out, it does break down. It's almost like an aged critter that you would have had hung in your garage for an extra week. So it does break it down. So it's not a bad thing to pull out meat from 3 years.
But with jerky, you're not too caught up in it.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
And I do like a jerky where you're like gnawing on it.
Okay.
Right? Chewing on it.
So you
get a little sinew in there,
right.
Long cut.
So you get your pieces, and then do you cross cut it?
For my wife, I do. I cross cut the ones for the wife because she does not like the pieces with the sinew. She does not like chewing on it. I like to throw it in my mouth and just like chew on it for a while,
like a piece of wood.
Yeah,
like a bark.
Well, I don't chew on wood, but I like a tough piece of jerky.
All right,
but no, it's I will cross cut, and obviously if you got tooth issues and stuff like that, you don't want to be gnawing on a tough piece of meat. So cross cut makes it all the more chewy, tender.
Okay,
and cross cut them up. I've got a slicer now. I've upgraded. I used to hand cut everything. Right now, my wife got me a slicer a few years back, meat slicer. So that makes all the cuts the same.
Just like something you'd get at Cabela's.
Yep, it's a Cabela's slicer.
And then how thin do you slice it?
I wish I had measured it, but it's about probably an 1/8 inch or something like that.
It's pretty thin.
Yeah, it's about an 1/8 of an inch.
You leave the meat a little semi-frozen when you cut?
When you're slicing it, you can. I did when I would hand slice it, but with this automatic slicer, not
necessary.
Not as much. No, not at all. It's pretty easy.
So you'll cross cut or long cut depending on.
I'll sneak some long cut in there, and when my wife gets to those, she
passes up.
Passes up.
That's how you keep your wife and kids from eating them.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
so tell her all that has sinew in it, and it's all long cut.
So once you have all those slices, what do you do?
Everything's sliced up. I whip up my brine. And like I say, I change the brine a lot, depending on what we want, how we want it. Sometimes I will make it a little bit sweeter if the kids like the sweet stuff. They like a little bit of, I'll even put agave in there or the maple syrup on it just to get a little bit of a sugary coat to it.
Okay.
But a lot of it is just soy style recipes with, a little bit of apple juice and things like that. I'll throw sometimes I'll put spices in there. Some of the garden peppers that I had dehydrated that got a little bite to them. I'll put that in there to, put a little flavor to it, just like a pepper jerky,
Yep.
And I'll have to keep that little batch set aside if it's got the hot pepper flakes. But I do like jerky that has a little bit of that to it. Got a little bit of bite to it.
What was the mixture you gave to David Brinker and I? Because that was freaking good.
I can't remember.
Buckets of it.
I don't think
you said it was just honey.
I don't think I put a whole lot of spice to that one. It was honey. That was a honey glaze. that I did on that one. So that was mostly soy, applesauce, or apple
how do you
juice.
do this? You put it in the dehydrator.
Yep. Put it in the bowl. I dehydrate it overnight. So
the brine is what?
I just brine it overnight.
What would be the brine that you use for this one?
Basically soy sauce, apple juice, and spices.
Okay.
And I'll throw some salt in there as well.
Okay.
I don't like a real salted jerky though. Mm-hmm. So soy has enough salt in there, enough sodium in there to really take care of that for you. So I just let the dehydrator do the magic. And
so how long do you soak it in the brine?
Overnight.
In the fridge?
Get up in the morning. Yep, in the fridge.
Okay.
Get up in the morning, or if you're in Montana, in the garage, because it's always cold this time of year. And then, overnight, get up in the morning, load up all the racks full of strips of meat, let it go all day. You know, there's usually it takes about 8 hours or so.
Okay.
With the with that 1/8 inch cut.
Okay. So you told me you added the stuff to it later, toward the end.
What's that?
Like honey and things like that.
Oh yeah, on the brine. So yeah, I did on that one. Sometimes I'll do up a whole batch. I'll let it soak overnight in the fridge, and then I'll separate some. So it's got a good brine to it. I'll split it up. I'll do one with like a sweetener, whether that's agave or honey or maple syrup. And then I'll do that, and you don't have to let that sit overnight. It's on there.
Okay.
And then I'll do the other batch, for myself and the honey glaze for the kiddos. Okay. So I did that one. You'd put it on right before you put it in the hydrator in the morning. It doesn't take all night to get that glaze.
So you put it on right when you're getting ready to turn on the dehydrator.
Yep.
And then anything afterward, or you just pull it off and you're done?
Pull it off, you're done. Start eating it. It's easy. Jerky's easy, man. And I'll do the same thing with fish, and fish is really good jerky.
Costs a fortune.
It does.
Costs a fortune.
Yeah.
You had a giant gallon bag of it.
I know.
That cost virtually nothing.
No, nothing. Just cost me a little bit of time. And, you end up with so many critters at the end of a hunting season. It's nice to whip up bags of jerky and take them on trips like that. And I always have jerky on my hunts, and it's great.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay, back to what you're taking.
But again, the fish, that's another one.
Okay.
I didn't bring any fish with that one on that trip, but thin strips of fish. Now, what I like to do is take a fillet, and I'll carve about, 3/4 of an inch off of that fillet with a sharp knife. And then I will split that little piece that I carved off, and then I'll fold it over like butterfly style. And that's how I'll brine it, and that's how I'll dehydrate it. And fish jerky is so good. Similar recipe. You don't need to let it soak all night though. It takes brine really fast.
So maybe
30 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, red meat typically can take all night.
A while.
But yeah. So wait a sec. Does it maintain or retain omega-3s or anything like that? Do you know? What's the nutritional value of fish after it's dehydrated?
They say dehydrating, you do lose a little bit of nutrition, but it's insignificant.
I would imagine the protein levels would stay the same, but I don't know about the fats.
I don't know about the fats. I know when I'm making the jerky, you're still, even after you dehydrate it, they're loaded with fats.
Okay.
So, it's not something that you want to let sit out. Fats will go rancid on you. It's not something that you just keep outdoors.
Indefinitely.
Not really.
It seems like it should last weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
I've packed, fish jerky in the mountains many a time, and it's always a hit. It's real good.
Really?
So,
okay. What else do you typically like to bring
as far as snacks
for
or breakfast?
Backpacking. Because you've told me you've made meals, which you make a flat out, you make a meal, like a beef stroganoff.
Dude, the meals is fun. That is one of my favorites just because you can get so creative. So I'll just
make
rattle
it
off
exactly
a few
like you like
at
home, just like you would eat it
exactly
at home.
how you would eat it at home, whether that's a big old thing of chili or spaghetti or whatever. The only thing you want to do different when you're making it at home and you're feeding your family that night, cut the pieces smaller. Make sure the meat is ground. When you're cooking the meat up, you've really separated it. Got it into smaller pieces.
Okay.
Everything,
Chop it
vegetables.
Up. Just very, very small pieces.
Especially if you're running mushrooms in there, cut those things tiny. And that helps out a lot when you dehydrate. You don't want big chunks in there. It just, it's not as...
Because you're going to rehydrate it.
You're going to rehydrate it. So small pieces rehydrate faster.
Okay.
But I mean, for guys just getting into dehydrating their own meals, it is, again, ridiculously cheap because a lot of these meals I make with quinoa, with rice.
Yep. Which I love both of those.
Yeah.
I don't like noodles.
You can use rice noodles. Rice noodles are great. Brown rice noodles. But yeah, white rice. Quinoa is one of my favorites because not only is the nutritional value better for a grain, it's got more protein in it, again. And it rehydrates ridiculously fast. Quinoa just puffs right back up.
Okay.
So you can simmer quinoa and you're eating in 5 minutes. But obviously the quinoa is also going to have vegetables in there. It's going to have meat in there, maybe some curry. But those dishes are just fun to make.
Do you ever use sweet potato and yams?
Oh, yeah.
Because I love
a ton.
Those.
Yeah. Dude, I just learned that Ryan Avery hates sweet potatoes. That shocked me.
That's wrong.
I don't know what's wrong with him. I was shocked. Everybody should love sweet potatoes.
Absolutely.
So, all right, I'll give you a quick sweet potato recipe. Do you like fruit roll-ups when you were a kid?
Oh, who doesn't?
All right, so this
dumb question.
This is my go-to. We're adults now, so we move away from just the simple sugary fruits, and now we're on to yams or sweet potatoes. So, real simple. Take 3 sweet potatoes or 3 yams, the orange, the yams. Take 3 apples or a tub of, hopefully you've canned some applesauce at some point. Soften them up, cook them down, put them in the oven, either cook them you can boil sweet potatoes if you cut them down into small pieces, or just run your oven to like 425 and let them cook for about 25 minutes.
My favorite way to cook sweet potatoes is on the Traeger grill.
Is that the best way? Is it going to soften the inside? So all you want to do is you want to cook it down to where you can soften up the actual sweet potato itself.
Yeah.
Remove the skin, hopefully.
I wrap it in tinfoil and throw it in the Traeger.
There you go. That works. So do that and take, again, either some applesauce of comparable amounts or 3 or 4 apples. Do the same thing. Cook them down in water.
Mash them up.
And then basically take them and put them in a food processor. Put the 3 apples in there. Put your 3 sweet potatoes in there. I always dump about a tablespoon or 2 if I'm feeling crazy with the cinnamon. Throw some nutmeg in there.
Okay. This sounds like sweet potato pie.
Dude, it's good. You can nutmeg, or I've even ran allspice in there just to spice it up a little bit. You're going to have to add some water when you put it in the food processor.
And you just
make
puree
it nice and pureed and then dump that out. Sometimes you have to spread it onto the racks. I use that, again, that Excalibur. I have those silicone sheets, and I run those on top. Spread that stuff out, not real thick, obviously. Think back to when you used to make simple fruits like, apple roll-ups and all that kind of thing.
Yep.
Roll it out, put it in the dehydrator. Again, it's going to take probably about 6 hours. And I'll run that at about 135 degrees. It's done. You peel them off there, you roll it up, or if you want to go into chips, which my daughters like sweet potato chips.
Yeah.
Dehydrate it a little bit more. So now you take that big square off of the silicone tray and you just break it up into chips. And they're like the best little snack you can have.
Oh.
So you've got good clean carbs in the apples, and it's like a dessert on the mountain.
Jeez.
So
that sounds
real easy. Dude,
that sounds so good.
Yeah.
So I like curry.
And it's cheap. It's cheap. You like curry?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's a dish for you. So, cook up your white rice or cook up your quinoa. Yeah. Now, cook up all your garden vegetables or whatever you have. Throw an onion in there, throw some peppers in there, kale, whatever you got, some ground meat. These days, I also, when I'm processing the game, I'll do a bunch of meat where I just bag it and then I fresh grind it the night I'm eating it. I got a little, again, Cabela's grinder.
Okay.
I'll just run it through before we make burgers.
I got one of those.
That's my daughter's job.
You just grind it like in the garage or whatever.
No fat added, nothing. Just straight meat.
Look at all those ducks.
Oh, yeah. And so, you cook that up, basically make a stir fry of a bunch of meat. You can add whatever tickles your fancy as far as your palate goes. I throw a lot of onions, a lot of green peppers, greens, kale, all that stuff in there. Cook it up, add that to the rice, make yourself up some curry, add that to it, or the quinoa. And man, obviously taste test it. and then dehydrate that out on a rack. And
you just mix it all together.
Mix it all together. Take one big bowl, the bowl that you feel like would be your perfect size meal.
Yeah.
Fill it up with that. Use one rack specifically for that one meal. So it's always the same. I've got one black bowl at my house that I use with every stinking meal because I know
that's going
to be 14 ounces of water to rehydrate it. Okay. It's always the same, never changes. And now those curry meals with the quinoa, the rice, there's just like nothing beats it. And again, it's cheap, man. It's so cheap. And you don't have all the extra sodium and nonsense in there.
So what backpacking stove and what's your setup there? How do you port water? How do you filter water? What's your whole cooking system up there? Because, it's not a Mountain House bag.
A few different things you can do as far as how to cook it.
Rehydrate it.
How to rehydrate it. I've got one of those. I've got a Jetboil Mini Mo, and I'm still waiting for somebody to tell me that prove to me that there's a more efficient one out there than a Jetboil. I know MSRs are great. People love the MSRs. I've just always used this Jetboil. And I run the Mini Mo. It's a bigger pot to it. And it also has a really good,
efficiency rating
toggle on there. So you can toggle that thing down to an orange flame, or you can go full on scorch. I mean, you can blast it. But the best thing about that Mini Mo is it does toggle down to just a slow simmer that you can, like, I'll do the dishes.
I've had ones where you try to dial it down and it just goes out.
That never happens with this. It is really, really, not sensitive. It just, it takes it quite a few grinds to drop it down to an orange flame. And, man, I pour my meal in there. Obviously, you boil your 14 ounces first, dump your meal in it, and I'll just let it simmer a little bit, stir it around. And in 5 minutes, I'm eating that food.
Really?
It rehydrates that fast when you simmer it. Now, you can take the other route. You can get on Amazon and buy Mylar bags with the zip pouch and everything. Put your food in there and rehydrate it just like you would any Mountain House. You can go buy those bags. They're not that expensive and do it that way. But I like to eat pretty quick, and I just simmer it, eat it right there.
Have you made a lot of bone marrow? Have you dehydrated it?
No.
I'm wondering because I love bone marrow.
You talking the broth itself?
Yeah, we'll take the moose bones is what I've been using for the last year or so because there's so much marrow in there.
I wouldn't know. I don't have a moose.
I've got two, Ryan. But I chopped them with a chop saw.
Okay.
In donuts. Yeah. And then I have just a bowl of bones, chopped bones, and then I'll add them to the Instapot. And I'll throw in vinegar, apple cider vinegar, to help that acid.
Yep. Pull it out.
And then we'll throw in a bunch of different spices and
carrots and celery, stuff like that.
Yeah. And before we do that, I will throw the bones themselves on a cookie sheet or a sheet and drizzle them with like olive oil and herbs and spices and bake them at 350 or something for 20 minutes. Or everything I've read, I've tried it both ways. It just is more flavorful. For some reason.
I've always been curious of that because I've never done it that way. I've never put them in the oven or done that route.
It seems to taste better.
It does. Okay.
Yeah. So then we do the Instapot, and then you end up with your bone marrow. We strain it, and you have the guys that get rid of all the fat, and then you have the ones that keep the fat in it. I like the fat. My wife and kids don't like that much fat in it.
Okay.
It tastes. It definitely has a. I don't know. If you dump it into a bowl, it'll literally be 40% fat on the top.
Yep.
And then 60% broth at the
bottom.
Are
you just rolling it into the fridge in like a mason jar? Or are you freezing it?
We've done it a couple of different ways. What I've done with the broth is the bone marrow. After it's done, I will pour it into ice cube trays.
Oh yeah. Gotcha.
And then I'll
That's a good way to go.
And then I'll just pop them out and vacuum seal them. So that's one way, just so I can take them on the road or whatever, and I just cut open the bag and put it in whatever.
Right.
The other way I've done it, which is faster, a little less work, not a two-step process. I have little quart jars, not quart jars, little 2-cup jars,
8 ounce or 16 ounce.
Yeah.
Pint jar.
Pint jar, and then I just fill that jar up, screw the lid on, put it in the freezer.
Yeah.
And then it just freezes. And it just keeps, we got jars and jars of them in the freezer. And when I'm going through it fast, I'll just bring a jar out, crank off the lid, throw it in the microwave, warm it up in 60 seconds, minute and a half. And then I'll sip it every morning.
It's good stuff, man. I just
like,
and the fat on there is just, that's a bonus.
And so the fat is a little strong for the kids, I guess, and the wives. I love it.
Yep.
But that bone marrow fat is something. I don't know what. Like,
yeah.
But a lot of nutritional value, I think, is in it.
That's it. Yeah, you get so much from bone marrow. It's definitely worth doing. I've never done a moose, but even the deer, obviously you get little plugs on the deer bones, but elk you get a pretty dang significant amount when you cook those down. So now bone broth is one of the most nutrient rich pieces you can add to the puzzle back home for sure.
So what I'm curious about is if I make up a beef stew or something using bone broth as my base, puree it, do what you're talking about, and then dehydrate it.
Yep.
Then how will that reconstitute later? Seems like it would work fine.
Oh yeah, you're going to get the nutrient benefits of it for sure. Because once you dehydrate it, obviously you've strained it or you've cooked it down enough in your crock pot to where you've eliminated a lot of just the water part of it. No, you're going to definitely get the benefits of it, of the bone broth.
And as I understand it, once you've cooked fats up to a certain temperature, it'll preserve. It'll keep to a certain period of time. Like bear fat. When Ranella was doing his show where he shot that blueberry bear, British Columbia, something like that,
he rendered it down.
And then you could put it in the freezer.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of bear fat rendering.
Actually, I think he said you could just keep it at room temperature on the counter.
It'll last your lifetime.
Like coconut oil.
Yeah, it doesn't go rancid at all.
Now, I just kept it on the bear meat and then froze the meat.
Gotcha.
It went rancid in 3 months.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the fat itself.
That was a long time ago.
You have to. So yeah, we always make a lot of bear fat. I've got so many mason jars of rendered fat in my house. My wife is a little irritated. She's like, "What are we going to do with all this stuff?" But no, it's so good. It's fun to do. But off of one bear, you can get a lot of jars of just rendered down fat. But yeah, you just, you come to an old hunter's cabin, you could have a thing of bear fat there. It's almost like lard or Crisco. It just never goes bad, so.
Just spread that on toast.
Yeah, dude, I've tried it in coffee, like bulletproof bear fat coffee. I'll drink it. It's not the best. My wife hates it, but no, I've tried it in everything. Obviously cooking, making pastries is really big. We just don't make a lot of pastries, but no, just, putting a little bit of that in the bottom of the pan, cooking up your eggs and all that kind of thing. It's pretty good.
I got a tangent for you. So, because this is going to go somewhere. You talked to me, you told me a while ago, like one of your dream hunts is a scrub bull in Australia.
Yes,
which
it is.
Kind of is odd in a sense that, you're talking about like a feral cow.
Right.
But
it would not be as exciting, though, if it wasn't so dangerous. It's an adventure. You
want to do it because it can kill you.
Right.
Sort of like a Cape Buffalo, but more affordable.
Yeah, I don't think I could. Yeah, I just like the idea. I've just heard people talk about the scrub bulls and how they just look for you. I mean, they come looking for you. And no, they're just like one of the top most dangerous game on the planet, which is crazy. And you'd never think that could happen from just a cow getting loose. I
just did that podcast with Ryan Bassham the other day, and he was talking about Cape Buffalo. And I think they're nicknamed the Black Death, right? For similar reasons. Like they kill more hunters in Africa than any other big game animal. More hunters. Hippos kill more people.
Right.
That's how I understand it. But the reason I, bringing up Australia here, I was talking to a guy there who was talking about killing pigs. And he just said, hey, they taste like crap here because they're eating so much carrion.
Gotcha.
What do you think about that? Do you think it's salvageable? Do you think Ryan Lampers could find a way to make it taste edible?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Because I've had some bears from POW that I could not salvage.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up feeding it to my dog.
Yeah, have you had one of those fish-eating bears that was just stanky? Yeah.
That one with the 2 tags in it that was almost 21-inch skull.
That's right.
That thing was a giant. They said they didn't think it had hibernated in a couple of years. It just was eaten through the winter.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can. Honestly, Brian, I stick to the blueberry black bears in the fall, and I've never had
the eating
a bad
bears.
one. The eating bears, the edibles.
Huh.
Those things are so good.
I've had some from POW.
Spring bears,
that I liked.
some spring bears. I don't know the percentage, but sometimes you'll get a spring bear. Obviously, he's been feeding on skunk cabbage and everything else, and they're just not good, not the best. Whereas fall bears are always delicious.
All right, so tell me this. So talking to some Aussie guys too, they can get me on a good donkey hunt. What do you think about donkey hunts?
Oh, dude, I don't know. I just don't think I don't have a big desire to go donkey hunting myself.
I don't know, man. My brother Brent was all goofing around looking at magazines. There were some donkey hunting magazines.
Okay.
Like for the donkey hunting.
That's weird.
Enthusiasts.
And this is where?
Australia.
Okay.
So,
donkey hunt.
And camels. So you can bow hunt donkeys or camels.
No kidding.
But apparently donkeys they look kind of zebra-ish, like desert donkeys, you know?
Desert donkeys. And
they actually looked pretty cool.
Is it just they're feral? There's a pile of them? Okay.
Yep. They're just running around. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
So interesting. There's not really anything I won't eat myself.
I'll try anything. I probably would get discouraged at coyote because I've never heard anybody.
Ranella and Remy ate.
They tried it,
and
they
did not look too pleased.
And I think if Ranella, makes it and he can't find a way to cook it, it's probably something you want to avoid.
What does? You know what does taste good? Kawadi.
Kawadi? Yeah, I wouldn't know. We tried. I was hoping this year we'd get to try some, but no. You put me on some kawadi too, and I failed. But this was one of those deals.
You win some, you lose some.
But I was surprised. So, I mean, hey, I'd try anything. I'd try donkey if somebody shot it.
I ate a lot of horse in Japan.
You know what I ate the other day? I ate muskrat.
Oh.
We had muskrat tacos.
And?
That was with old Randy Newberg. He made a big old pot. It took like 28 muskrat to fill this crock pot full of a delicious meat. It was good. It was real good. But you got to pick out the kneecaps.
Really?
So you're eating your taco or your burrito or whatever you got going on, and you're and once you kind of, it's like picking out some buckshot out of a goose, right? And every once in a while you just come across it and you gnaw on it. It's just a hard little kneecap, and then you spit it out.
Really?
A little weird, but now the meat itself was actually pretty dang good.
My brother informed me that camel hump is a delicacy.
Really? Camel hump, huh?
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yep. It's the way you cook you cook the whole hump on one thing.
Interesting.
It's a fancy meal.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'd try anything once, and I think most things, most meat you could probably make work, with the exception of critters that are just eating foul, like or some spring bears,
like
or
rotten,
the fish, rotten fish or whatever. But
so I have enough meals that you've mentioned that I can go home and play with some of these things. Tell me what you like that's not a meal, like fruit roll-up kind of snacks, or more like along the lines of the peanut butter protein balls that you're making. What else do you like to bring?
Probably my favorite is, I've put the recipe up many times. I just call it mountain mush. It's like a hot cereal or a cold cereal. It's like the best snack or lunch you could ever have as far as nutrients. And what that is similar to the protein balls or cookies or whatever bars you want to make. It's got an oat base. You can also use, they've got quinoa flakes now that you can use in replacement of oatmeal. But most of the time, I'll just run oats. So before my hunting season, I'll make up, 150 bags of these meals. And basically what it is half a cup of oats, a little bit of either powdered milk or, I'll get creative with some of the ops stuff. I'll put some chocolate, whey protein in there. I'll put some vanilla, whatever, just kind of mix up the flavors. And then I like to add a lot of the dried fruit. So I'll add, apples or pears are some of my favorites, banana chips, seeds. You can get creative with like craisins or raisins or, dried pineapple. And you might as well make up like 10 meals in a vanilla way with a certain type of berry, like a dried blueberry. One of the things I also dehydrate in the fall is blackberries.
Okay.
Blackberry powder. Another thing that we do on the dehydrator, it takes a while to dehydrate, but the powder you get at the end is awesome. And you put a big old heaping spoonful of that in your meal.
Really?
And that's your breakfast. And that meal is good hot. It's good cold. If you don't have a stove, just add water and it, reconstitutes really fast. And that's one of the things that, again, it's really cheap, it's easy, and you can make it to whatever flavor you want. And you can add extra hemp hearts, coconut for extra fats, all that kind of stuff. And just make it to where you want it. Honestly, each one of my bags is packing about 700 to 800 calories. It's pretty lightweight. It's like the best meal in the middle of the day. It's a good start meal for breakfast. And I'll just do up a pile of those in different flavors, mark the bags.
You ever had chocolate?
Add chocolate? No. But I could. I'd probably be happy about it.
So,
but why I don't, Brian, is I try to go as light on sugar, just sugar in general. But by saying that, I'll add honey or agave or maple syrup to it as well. Yeah. I just feel like that's a little bit better sugar to add. Maybe it's not, but I don't add. I try to keep all in the mountain as low a sugar intake as possible.
Okay,
especially now that I'm old. Yeah, I don't want inflammation and gut issues, and it's when you have inflammation with sugar, just staying hydrated is an issue when you overload yourself on sugar and joint inflammation and all those kinds of things. So I found that I don't get sore anymore on the mountain. I don't come away from a hunt feeling like I'm 65 years old and just beat down. Just don't get sore anymore. And the only thing I can attribute that to is the food. It's just a cleaner way of living as far as food goes, making my own, knowing what's in it, cutting out the sugars. The sugars has been number one for me.
I'm a pretty low sugar, low carb person to begin with. Maybe it's from years of not eating it, but sugar, I don't like too much. But when I'm on the mountain, I do like some dark chocolate. I will say I do like some those like shots, little jelly.
Oh yeah, gel shots like goo and Cliff shots and whatever.
As a treat, I kind of do. I just like it
for sure.
But I'd say I'm pretty low sugar, straight sugars. Yeah. And I've had to because I gotten older. I will be sore.
Yeah.
If I don't, if I eat too much of that crap.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, it's always a learning curve. I'm always learning more things, and I ate garbage up into my 30s as far as
me too.
I could eat clean at the house all the time, but once I hit the mountain,
eat crap.
It's like I'm picking up a bag of Snicker bars and throwing them in my pack before I hit the mountain.
Those days are dead.
Those days are long gone because at the end of those trips, and especially after 3-4 months of hunting, by the end of the year, you just feel like garbage, and your staying power isn't there. I mean, if you know your body, by day 7, if you're eating like junk, you're going to be hurting. And usually you don't have that drive anymore because you're achy, your joints are swollen, your gut hurts or is bloated, which is another thing that sugar does. And it keeps you from staying hydrated. And so all those little things, just playing with food and figuring out what works best for you. But sugar for me was the number one thing to cut out, especially in the backcountry and prior to going in and all that, and just in general. But that, as far as inflammation, which is honestly, that's what breaks you down over time. So it makes you get older than you really are. So
how much carbs do you take in on a typical backcountry day?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm not real good at counting like grams of protein or carbs or anything like that. But I'm eating a lot of oats, so I'm taking in a significant amount of carbs up there. But I'm also adding a lot of fats to that as well, which is great energy. But all those meals, I usually do 2 of those mountain mushes a day, one for breakfast, one for lunch. And then like we've talked about with these peanut butter balls, protein balls, I mean, there's oats in all of those. So there's carbs, dried fruit, apples, pears, all that kind of stuff. I just don't know what that amount is. I just know it works for me. Don't really go off numbers too much.
But you're having like your apple and your rehydrated apple and quinoa and your sweet potatoes and your typical meals that you have on a day-to-day basis. You're having your oats, just
clean carbs.
I'd say you're probably at 200 grams of carbs a day.
Yeah, I don't know.
150, maybe more.
Could be. I mean, I
don't know. I'd have to see.
I know I could probably figure out where I'm at calorie-wise, but I've never really broke down the carbs to fats.
About how many calories?
Well, I figure each one of those meals is about 800. Okay. So you're looking at 1,600 just with those 2 meals alone.
Yep.
My dinner, I'm always going to be probably 600-700 calories with that dinner meal, and then also with those meals, you can buy them or you can make your own with the vacuum packer. Is just coconut packets, or olive oil packets. You can buy those on Amazon. But the coconut packets are good. You can add, I think each one of those is packing about 200 calories per little 1 ounce thing of coconut.
Where do you get those?
On Amazon.
You just dump them into your meals?
Healthy foods places have them now. Yep, just dump it right into the hot meal at the end of the day. And
they don't taste like coconut?
Oh, yeah. They do.
Yes.
They do have so if you get the unrefined, yes, it's going to have a coconut flavor. If you get the refined, that coconut flavor won't be there.
Limited.
It'll be limited.
Okay. But which do you like?
I like the coconut flavor myself.
Yeah, me too.
I'll put that in every meal, and you're just, 2 packets, and you just jacked up 400 extra calories.
Yep.
So,
and it's good fats.
It is. It's good fats.
Good energy.
Yep. Good. Absolutely.
Everything's going to be smooth.
So if I had to guess, I'm definitely pushing 3,000 calories easy with the leathers and the bars and those protein balls and the meals.
You do bring fruit leathers with you?
Yeah. The good stuff, the sweet potato leathers.
Oh, the sweet potato leathers. Okay.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I do a little bag every day of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about nuts?
I'm getting most of that in the balls, the protein bars that I make and that kind of thing. So I don't typically pack. I used to have a bag of almonds that I dip into a little bit every day, but I definitely would if I had them. But I think I'm getting more
what you need.
Almond butter and peanut butter itself in these balls that I make. So.
Do you ever get sick of your food?
No, I don't. I don't know. I know a lot of people probably would with the diet I'm eating. But I could eat peanut butter all day long every day for a week and be just fine. Now, obviously, there are times, like we did a death hike last year where, you're putting 30 plus miles a day on, and you crave things when you're just putting yourself through the ringer. And I saw guys eating gummies, and I saw guys eating, all the sugary things, and they were digging on that. And, I think adding a little bit of sweetness to some of these treats with the maple syrup or the agave or the honey, that helps. That helps a little more palatable, but getting a little more sweetness to it. But no, honestly, man, I'm boring. I could eat those mountain mushes, these bars, the leathers, and I could do that for 10 days and be perfectly happy. But the dinners, that's where you can get creative and give yourself a completely different meal every night.
I find that if the food is healthy for me, I never get sick of it. I don't go, I can't eat this anymore.
Yeah.
I always like it.
No, I think you got to train yourself. It's fuel, right? It's not just about the flavor. And I think if you numb yourself to that and just realize this is about fueling yourself, knowing what's coming if you're not fueled right.
Goal.
Yeah. Your goal is to get a big old mature animal at the end of the week, not.
So I need to finish hearing about your your stove setup and how you rehydrate your food and whatnot, because I don't think we got there.
I mean, my way of doing it is probably not going to be anybody's favorite, just because I don't mind cleaning out that mini mo at the end of it. So I boil the 14 ounces of water, I dump it in, I simmer it.
You actually cook it in the pot.
Yep. I am willing to pack an extra little 4-ounce canister of jet oil fuel just to do that, because like I said, I'm eating in a matter of minutes. Obviously, on a trip where I didn't want any extra weight, I just rehydrate it in a bag, pick up a zip Mylar bag and get those. They're pretty cheap on Amazon. But so,
do you bring an extra pot?
No, I run it right in the mini mo
right
itself.
In the mini. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The other nice thing about that mini mo is it's bigger than most all the Flash and all the other jet boils they make. It's wide. It's a big old wide mouth to it. And it's not that tall. It's kind of a squatty cup, but gosh, I think that's about a 20 plus ounce cup.
Okay.
Plenty big, simmers fast. It's wide mouth. It's easy to clean out. That's how I do it.
Have you ever used the square wood stove to cook?
I haven't, but I plan to. I know a lot of guys do.
And what's the theory behind that? Just to save on fuel?
Save on fuel. Yeah, a lot of guys will just go stoveless all day, but that meal at night when you're at the tent cooking, it's nice to have a hot meal, and that's where you can get away with doing it.
So you're saying ditch your stove.
Ditch your stove.
Home, ditch your fuel.
Oh yeah, if you've got a stove and you're running
plenty
late
of
season,
wood,
you could easily ditch the stove. Like I said, my breakfast and my lunches, those are all just cold water anyway. Yeah, just a little pot, heat that up on the stove, and all the boiled water. Those things get so bloody hot, man.
You mentioned this on an earlier podcast, but let's talk about this again. Water treatment.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I run the SteriPen. I'm a big believer in the SteriPen. I know a lot of guys like the Sawyers, and those things are awesome. They're lighter. They don't handle well in freezing conditions. The SteriPen handles great. I've got the classic, and I've never had a problem. The original, those things sucked.
Yeah,
I got
the
about
hiker
a year.
or the backpacker.
Yeah, it's like the
versions.
green one.
The green one sucks.
The little button on it goes out.
Yep. The classics were.
Yeah, the new ones
last
awesome.
forever.
Last forever, and I've never gotten sick, and elk hunting, we're drinking from some pretty scuzzy stuff. Obviously, the SteriPen, everybody knows probably what those do. It doesn't kill what you're drinking.
Yeah.
It basically sterilizes it so it can't reproduce and cause a big bloom in your gut and get you that way. But I have never got a cryptosporidium or giardia or any of that stuff using the Steri. So I run that. Obviously, it's an electronics piece. Have a backup. I bring iodine tabs.
Yeah.
And I've done a ton of research on iodine tabs. And I used to think that iodine, if you had 10 days of iodine tabs, it'd be too much. It would take a lot of iodine actually
to hurt you,
to be a detriment to your gut biome and all that. So that's definitely the lightest way to go.
Yeah.
I just run it as a backup because I don't like the flavor as much.
Yeah.
So SteriPen is it for me.
Okay. And then water. Do you use then a Nalgene type thing? Do you use?
So I've got those
water bladder.
Yeah, I've got 2 water bladders that I'll run. I'm not a big fan of the what do you call those things? Like the Camelback, the hose that comes around. I don't know. I just don't like the flavor of it. It just tastes like plastic to me. So I just run those Hydro Packs. I've got the Nalgene style Hydro Pack bottle, so it's got a wide mouth on it. I can get the SteriPen in there. And then I've got those 3-liter Hydro Pack fold up
Hydro Pack. Who makes that?
Hydro Pack. They're the company. It's just like a plasticky material.
Yeah.
Really, really tough.
Because I have some platypus ones that just roll up and they're super tiny and they just have a little lid on it.
Real similar. That's what these are. Just a different company. But
and then I'll bring an Nalgene. I just like having the water I can shake and mix drinks.
I got to have a Nalgene, and I run those Hydro Packs for hauling stuff around, and that's I never know where you're going to be, especially mule deer hunting. I just bring those 2 hydro packs with me because that's
how many liters? 6
That's
liters?
6 liters there plus my nalgene.
Okay.
That's going to get me a ways.
Because I was going to say, I'm curious what you like to bring for areas where there's no water at the top of a mountain and you got to haul it with you.
If I know ahead of time, I'd pack another hydro pack.
Okay.
But 6 liters gets me.
And you like the hydro pack?
Yeah.
Because MSR has.
MSR, I think they're probably all real similar. Okay. I've just had good luck with that one. The sleeves, they're perfect size. They fit right down. That EXO I'm running, it fits right down in the side sleeve when it's full, and that stuff is real tough. So any of those bladders, but I always have the ability to have 6+ liters of water, Nalgene, and those 2 hydro packs. That's good.
Do you use any electrolytes? Do you bring what are your go-tos?
All right, so
because you talked about staying off sugar so that you don't get dehydrated.
Yeah.
What do you drink?
So my wife, being the naturopathic doctor she's always got cool little electrolyte packets, and I'll like running I'm not a big fan of straight water. I like flavored water. So I do like the Enduros. I'll do like an Ignite or 2 on the hill. But I do also like these little electrolyte packets. Some of it has no flavor at all. It's just a little dropper. And I couldn't tell you the name of it.
Okay.
And a little dropper, and it just adds all those electrolytes to your water, and it's flavorless. Those are important. I always pack salt capsules as well, just for last ditch effort, in case you're just completely spent and wiped out and you sweat.
Get those on Amazon.
Yeah.
Salt caps.
Yep. Salt caps. Buy a bottle of those. I always have those on hand.
Sometimes, I just can't seem to. It's been, 10, 12 days, and I just can't seem to drink anything without peeing.
Yeah.
Right away. And that's when I just slam a few salt caps.
Look, if you're sweating, if you're like spring bear, it's hot out, or, September, August hunts and you're sweating all day, it's a good thing. Just pop, 2, 3, 4 of those a day throughout the day. Just replenishing what you've sweated out.
That's what I started doing over the last few years.
Yeah.
Costco came out with these IV hydration packs, something like that. Like Hydration IV. I don't remember the brand.
Okay.
But my wife got them, and I really like them. I feel a noticeable difference. I do like to bring a little Pedialyte, and I like to mix those little Pedialyte packets, the powdered ones,
gotcha,
with like an Ignite. So
here's one of the things I do to flavor my water as well, and that's, I don't know if you've probably seen some of my stories on Instagram where I'm dehydrating lemons and oranges and grapefruits. Similar to like you would an apple. Slice them up.
Okay.
And my daughters love dehydrated lemons. You'd think it'd just be nasty to them, right? I mean, they still are super sour and everything, but they chew them up like chips.
No way.
And so I always have a bag of those, and you just drop one of those dehydrated rounds into your water bottle. There's some goodness to it, like some flavor to it. It adds a lemon, and basically you're getting some electrolytes from that, and it's all natural, and it tastes good. Or you just chew them up and eat them like they are. They're pretty good. Never thought I'd ever eat just straight dehydrated orange with the peel and all.
Yeah.
But you cut them into rounds, you get very little peel, you get a lot of the center, and it's pretty good. You can make a hot tea with it.
I'd be curious about that. I don't tend to like citrus that much.
Okay.
It's too acidic, and it bothers my stomach.
Gotcha.
I don't know why.
Stay away from the lemons. Stay away from the oranges.
Yeah, all of that stuff for some reason just doesn't sit well with me. I'm really alkaline.
Yeah, I've heard people don't like the citrus as much. My daughters, they're just, since they were babies, they used to eat straight lemons. 1 year old, they'd still eat those things.
If I eat lemons like that, I literally will get a headache, and my breathing will become elevated, and I'll have to curl up in a ball and wait for the
no way, you got to hit yourself
discomfort
with
to
EpiPen.
Leave. It's not an allergic reaction, I don't think. It's just my pH is different, and that just throws everything off, I think.
Gotcha.
I don't know. Smokes. I'm no doctor. No. This is your wife. This is a question for your wife.
Yeah, she could handle that one. She'd tell you what's wrong with yourself.
But I can tell you what, I can crush milk and all kinds of dairy, and I'm fine. That's why I like berries. Lots of berries.
Well, you're odd. Let me tell you. So most of the people,
I'm not going to argue there.
Most of the people that we've done some seminars lately. I'll pull out a bag of like orange chips. They're just like dehydrated rounds of oranges, and I'll have them try them. And usually it sounds pretty gross. Man, most people end up liking them.
Oranges are. I can get away with oranges. Lemons, I don't know. The lemons are bad, and grapefruits are okay.
Right. Well, they're a light way to make, water taste good anyway.
Look at this, dude.
We're in a good spot, man. I've been seeing swans come by. We got a bunch of geese flying by.
Did you see that bird of prey? Did you see what it was?
No.
It'd been flying back and forth for 30 minutes. Some kind of hawk.
Not a bad spot we picked here.
Falcon. So, that gives me a lot to think about, Ryan. A lot to think about.
I know I'm a weird dude with all my food.
No, it's good stuff. I want to dive into more of that down the road too, as I mess around with some of these.
Just fun, man. Lines. It's fun to get creative, especially in the off season. You're always coming up with ideas. And
the thing is these things can be consumed from home too. You don't have to be in the mountains to eat all this stuff.
No, and preferably you try them at home all season. You know what's going to agree with you. You know what's going to, treat you right. If you bring a bunch of citrus up there and don't know it doesn't agree with you.
Right.
You got issues. But the meals especially, just making them to taste. And I think if people tried that, they'd be surprised how easy
it is.
They are to make.
Yeah.
And how much money you can save. For sure.
And how good they are.
Yeah.
And do you just use a regular Ziploc for these things?
For the mountain mush, I do run Ziplocs.
Do you vacuum seal stuff? How do you do your dehydrated meals?
So the meals, you can do it two ways. I think I mentioned you can buy Mylar bags on Amazon.
Yeah. Okay.
You can buy those with, it's got the zip top to it. Mm-hmm. So you vacuum seal that, and then it's got the tear top when you go to, pull it out, and then you can also zip it back up to rehydrate it. You can buy those and use those bags, and I have those, and I've definitely used them. Mm-hmm. But quite honestly, most of the time, I'm just running it straight into a plastic vacuum pack bag that I'm vacuum packing pretty dang tight.
Okay.
And surprising, you get a long shelf life out of this dehydrated stuff. I know they say a year, but I've definitely pushed the boundaries on that. Mm-hmm. And food tastes great well after a year as well.
I talked to Heather at Heather's Choice about that, and she actually had her food tested for its nutritional value. Because when you dehydrate stuff, it has a certain amount of nutritional value that's lost.
Lose a little bit,
and then every month you lose some. Where freeze-dried just seems to maintains a lot longer.
Absolutely,
Where the shelf life is years rather than 1 or 2 years. But when I was talking to Heather and she got hers actually tested, she was surprised how much nutrition was lost in 1 year's time.
After 1 year.
After 1 year. And some of the meals were deemed just not enough nutrition to, you don't want those things to
over a year
to exceed more than a year.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So the taste was there, but the value was gone.
But the nutrition's gone.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So I probably should dig into that more. I talked to her about, I have a few meals that are a year and a half old, and she's like, well, we actually have those certified and tested with a crew of people who dug into that, and then it was like, darn it, it's really not that nutritious anymore.
And the whole back and forth with freeze-dried to, dehydrated is obviously, if I had the dollars to buy a freeze dryer,
I know
I'd buy a freeze dryer.
South Cox bought one.
He did.
I think, what was it, $3,000 or $4,000 or something?
Yeah.
That's a lot of dehydrated.
You got to make a lot of meals. Or I think what South has said is he'll rent it out to people in the off season or try to recover some costs. But I'd love to have one, but like I said,
they're expensive.
Yeah.
But I wonder, is it that much faster?
As far as
processing time?
I don't think it's faster. No, I think it may be a little longer. As far as when you're actually freeze-drying.
It just lasts longer.
It just lasts longer. And
it rehydrates better too.
It does.
General. Yeah.
A lot of people don't. A lot of people, and I haven't noticed this so much, but a lot of people like the flavor better with the freeze dried for some reason.
Because Heather's are dehydrated.
Hers are dehydrated. There's a lot of companies out there that freeze dry.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you know, especially with fruits and whatnot, the freeze dry is probably the best way to go.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know if my palate's just piss poor or whatever, but I like the flavor of all the stuff that I'm doing, so it works for me.
Well, cool, man. Yeah, this is good stuff. We ought to wrap this one up, I guess. And for those that want to ask Ryan more questions, go to his Instagram, and that's probably the best way to reach you.
Yeah. Yep.
And DM him, direct message at Stealthy Hunter. That's STHEALTHY Hunter, all one word.
That's right.
And Hunt Harvest Health Podcast is also on Instagram.
Yep.
And you have a web page for that.
Yep.
And you have a number of episodes you've recorded that are awesome, where you go into these kind of discussions often, and people can tune into those and check out your podcast as well. It's on iTunes and everywhere podcasts are found.
Everywhere. And let's just be upfront, though. If you want to get educated, listen to the podcast that have my wife on there. If you want to hear, you know, just dumb hunting stories, and then listen to the ones that I'm on.
Oh
there.
Man, the ones where your wife goes off on testosterone, and gut health, and I think they're invaluable. I think everyone should tune into those.
I think they're like you said, really valuable for us guys that want to be able to do what we love to do. This kind of stuff older. For forever.
I don't feel like I'm slowing down at all. Do you see that gun? You see that? See him flex on you? I'm 44. You got me by about a year.
I'm 45. I'm there, but man, quite honestly, Brian, I
feel healthier now than I've ever been in my life.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, with my wife's guidance, probably most of her guidance.
Yeah,
and the food thing and the lack of sugar. I feel great, man. I exercise every day, no joint pain, and
good life.
Excited for the next 30 years of hunting.
Yeah, very cool. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Gritty Podcast. As always, we appreciate your reviews and your comments. Send them. Go to briancall.com. Send us an email. Send us a note. Leave us reviews on iTunes. We always appreciate it. Thank you. Stay gritty.
Stay gritty.